The man told the girl standing in front of the door that she could not worry about what happened that night. After all, they will just lie together. Meredith herself thought about the Emperor's unhealthy appearance. He looked too pale and sickly. It seemed that he would leave this world right now. The man had a dim look. From the outside, he seemed very tired and in need of rest. The king's hands were trembling, and it did not befit a man of his position. Among all the people, right during the ceremony, the emperor began to cough loudly. Everyone around was surprised that their ruler was actually very sick, and his health complaints were true. No one knew how serious the disease was, and it was impossible that in such a difficult condition the emperor could share a bed with her on the first wedding night. The girl decided that she would really just lie next to him and spend the night with him like that. Besides, she felt safe with His Majesty. When the emperor's wife entered the room, a very disgusting, vile smell hit her nose. It was very unpleasant for her to feel this. But what she saw next shocked her more than anything, because she definitely did not expect to see this in the ruler's chambers. The emperor stood in the middle of the room. Everything around was covered in blood. On the floor lay men dressed in strange costumes. The man himself was also covered in blood. He held a sword in his hands. There was no need to guess who killed all these people. The emperor said she caught him off guard. He did not expect that someone would come to his room at such a moment, but it was too late to change or hide anything. But suddenly the man put the sword to her neck. The bride was not joking. She is amazed that he was barely able to stay on his feet this afternoon. And now he has defeated a gang of killers who sneaked into his room and is ready to deal with the unwanted guest. His Majesty asked why she bothered him. Doubts crept into the girl's mind as to whether her husband was really as ill as he seemed to be this afternoon. Gossip and rumors about his illness have been circulating in the lands of the Empire among his subjects for more than 1 year. But it was hard to believe. 3 months ago, Meredith was faced with the fact that Vaughn had to prepare for her wedding. Her father informed her that she was to marry His Imperial Majesty. And it was 3 months later that the solemn ceremony was to take place. The girl was not ready for this. She asked to explain what was happening, but the man was angry. He did not want to reveal his plans. However, to appease the girl, it was necessary to tell something of what he knew. It seemed that by the very expression of his eyes, he was asking why she happened to him so senselessly. It was unexpected for her to become a member of the Emperor's family. Besides, Lady Katerina has so far not succeeded in this field. The man became even more angry. He asked, "Is she really trying to break his will?" But Mendez simply asked if she could marry Lady Catherine early. After all, it would be wrong and a gesture of disrespect to the young lady. The girl asked for forgiveness, because she did not dare to go against the will of his lordship. She simply asked if this decision could be postponed. After all, she did not want to get married before her relative, who was also of the appropriate age. The angry man told Meredith to get out, because he didn't like repeating himself twice. In any case, in 3 months she was to be married to His Imperial Majesty. And it was no longer up for discussion. The man's voice was firm and unwavering. He did not expect to continue the conversation. Wei emphasized that he had not called her here to ask for her advice or to consult with her and to seek her opinion. His purpose was simply to inform. And the girl had nothing left but to agree to become a great empress and the owner of a powerful empire in the near future. But her position should have played into the hands of the man himself, who had interests in her. However, in the end, she did ask if Duchess Schwartz and Lady Catherine knew about it. The man replied that he knew, but what a difference it made. But Mendez said they were close family to her, and that's why she didn't care. The new bride herself said that she had a strange origin, which did not quite correspond to her further status, but the man ordered to keep quiet and accept the wedding as a fact that had to happen. Then, she was interested in only one thing. She asked how she should prepare for the wedding with the emperor. After all, it was responsible and quite difficult to do. The manners and orders in the imperial palace differed from the customary rules in their estate. People there followed old customs. The man replied that a mentor would be sent from the palace, who was supposed to introduce her to the norms of etiquette and behavior. And before that, she needs to behave quietly and slowly learn to communicate independently and behave in high society. As she walked through the dark corridors, she thought that a wedding with the emperor was already difficult to imagine. After all, there were already many candidates for the role of his wife, and all of them were descendants of prominent aristocratic families. And it was also interesting why Schwartz and Katerina were silent about it, although they knew perfectly well what future fate was in store for her. They would try with all their might to disrupt her marriage with such a distinguished groom. It was not in their plans. And if these two persons behaved quietly and did nothing wrong, they both knew that it was not worth bothering the bride. Perhaps even such an instruction was given to them by the man who instructed her a few minutes ago. After all, he clearly had his own interests. But it was impossible to think that the Duchess would not miss it just like that. After all, the emperor himself of a great state was appointed as her husband. And there was nothing surprising in that. After all, the emperor himself was a young man. This marriage with the young emperor was a very good match. And this was a great luck. The only thing that bothered her was that Duke Schwartz had informed her about the wedding as something that had already happened and should be accepted as a fact. But he will not give his daughter as a thing. Her heart told her that some meanness was hidden in this marriage. Duke Schwartz simply did nothing in his life. And while thinking about it, the girl did not notice how the daughter of Duke Schwartz appeared opposite her. She looked angrily at Mendema. The girl bowed low and asked to forgive her. She could do nothing against the Duke's daughter. This girl was always looking for a reason or an excuse to get a poor relative who had been under her father's care for many years. Miss Schwartz had already passed her, but turned around. She did not pay attention to the fact that Mendes was standing in the very corner of the corridor and did not interfere at all to pass by. The aristocrat asked if the foster mother had spoken to her father. She knew something. The young bride wanted to ask what the stepsister was talking about, but decided to keep looking at the floor and not make the girl angry. But Schwartz figured out the girl's intention and did not move from the city, as her sister had hoped. Miss said they should have already informed Mendmew of her marriage to the emperor. After all, there is so little time left before the ceremony itself. Such a party should be considered a great happiness, but everyone around behaved somehow strangely. The same Mendesa simply said that she was also surprised that she, and not Mendesa, would become the wife of the great ruler of the state. After all, she has nothing to do with such a high title. She did not have such a noble origin as Schwartz. Was it her destiny to become ruler and empress regardless of her origins? Mendes herself was an illegitimate daughter of the Duke. For this, she was hated by the entire Schwartz family, considering it a stain on their honor. The Duke and Duchess were of noble birth. Their daughter Katerina was also an heiress of noble blood. Mendes herself was like an apple in the eyes of this family. She was the illegitimate daughter of Duke Schwartz. Her mother was a woman from some nomadic tribe. It is not known how she entered the life of the young Duke, and it was she who filled the heart of the young aristocrat. This is how Meredith, Mendes, was born. And then she became a black spot for Katerina. Even the Duke and Duchess themselves did not accept her into their family. They shunned her every time they talked about an illegitimate daughter. Therefore, the noble family was not very interested in her fate. It could only be used. And in Katerina's eyes, according to Schwartz, it was a simple mistake in the life of a young nobleman. Therefore, she did not believe that her sister did not know about the real plans and intentions of the Schwartz family. The only thing she knew for sure was that her father did everything with a certain motive. Katerina emphasized that it is not necessary to know about the plans of adults. Now it is worth concentrating on what should become the wife of His Majesty the Emperor. Therefore, it is worth putting aside silly doubts and fulfilling your role and mission. It is worth forgetting yourself. In the end, she said that it was not enough for her to tarnish the honor of the family. Meredith thought that this was all too very suspicious. But she had no other choice. She had to obey her father. His will for her was still above all else. Only a few days ago, everything fell into place. The Duchess sent a dress for the girl. Such a gesture was completely out of character for Missy Schwartz. After all, before that, the woman ignored all the birthdays of her husband's daughter, not considering it necessary. The dress had been sent for Meredith to wear to the grand tea ceremony that was to be held tomorrow at Kubrim Manor. Many representatives of aristocratic noble families and ancient families were supposed to gather there. This confused the young maiden even more. After all, the Duchess did not like when Meredith flashed in the upper world. Not once in many years had she allowed the young lady to attend such events. Meredith wanted at least someone to share her doubts with. The girl turned to her servant. This maid was by her side for many years, and she was always ready to come to the aid of her mistress. Meredith shared her thoughts on her marriage. It was strange during the many years of the Schwartz life. All the time, they pretended not to even notice her and forgot to congratulate her on her birthday and other important holidays. Not noticing her at all, now they found an enviable husband for her and presented her with a beautiful dress for the upcoming aristocratic ball. The girl asked the maids why such a change in behavior came from. The servant answered, not quite believing what she was saying, as if her mistress's family had come to their senses and decided to change their course of action in relation to their unwanted relative. Anything could happen. But the girl doubted it. Just a few days ago, her sister was looking at her with the same hatred as always. It was not fashionable to call their last meeting pleasant and warm. Rodichka was ready to incinerate the bastard with a look. The girls looked at the dress. They still couldn't fall in love with her. Miranda said that the change in the behavior of her relatives did not bode well either, because nothing could change so drastically in their world, unless they all went crazy together. After all, they have openly talked many times about the fact that they dream that the unwanted child will disappear forever from their eyes and disappear from the family. She didn't want to wear this dress. The girl did not want to wear it for any money or gifts, but it is hard to imagine what threatened her for refusing. The next day, the girl was going down the stairs of her house. She noticed her sister and stepmother talking. Judging by the swearing how it sounded, they were talking about her. The tone of both was angry and not kind. "Stepmother Noxal, get ready. It's time to go." Merenga asked if she should think that they would all go in the same carriage. The woman's answer was positive. There were no further inquiries, because the old woman sent the bastard to change his clothes, because they were already late for the invited dinner. The Duchess turned to Meredith when she was already sitting in the carriage. The woman requested that Meredith not call her Duchess, but Mom at all guests. She hated making such a request, but for some reason, it was exactly what she needed. And at the same time, the old woman asked to call Katerina's sister, and they had to treat each other with kindness and kindness. It was hard for the girl to believe it, because never in all these years have they addressed each other like that. Everything became more interesting. The Duchess explained that from now on, the girl is simply obliged to address her and her daughter in this way. Tonight was supposed to be the debut in the upper world of aristocracy for the girl. Mirandis had no choice but to agree with her stepmother. From now on, the Duchess promised to call the girl her daughter. This should be observed not only in people. After all, the ears and eyes of spies were everywhere, and the fact that Mirandis was not seen among the aristocracy before is explained by her illness and weakness. The girl wondered why they took her with them this time. After all, they all hated it when she went out in the presence of other strangers or guests. The woman added that Mirandis would soon become an empress. But it is not fashionable to visit the palace without a social gathering. The Duchess said her new daughter should keep her mouth shut today, but the etiquette teacher from the palace was soon to arrive. It is he who will teach her all the wisdom and tricks of the aristocrats who ruled at the emperor's palace. The Duchess ordered to keep close to her and adopt her mannerisms as well. It sounded self-confident, but the girl was forced to accept the life experience of her new mother, who wanted to teach her. Finally, Duchess Schwartz and her daughters arrived at the site. The guests greeted the girls and their mother. Everyone around said that they hadn't seen a woman with her daughter at the invited balls for a long time, and they were also interested in the new person who was with them. The Duchess said it was her second daughter. Meredith said hello. She told everyone who met her for the first time, answered that it was very nice to meet you. Guests are amazed by her beauty, but everyone was surprised when they heard that she was the second daughter of Duchess Schwartz. The woman explained that her daughter was in poor health. and therefore little was known about her by all the guests and acquaintances of the woman. But some believed that the Duchess came from a noble family, but she was embarrassed to admit a bastard in the family. It tarnished her honor. Meredith herself thought about the hypocrisy of Duchess Schwartz. She treated the girl badly all these years. But now, when she was to become the emperor's wife, she began to treat her well and call her her daughter. There had to be something behind it. The girl was simply sick of what was happening around her. She wanted it all to end soon. The Duchess mumbled in her ear that she should say hello to everyone and introduce herself. After that, they will go home, but you should get used to the techniques. Meredith was soon to become empress. It was unpleasant for the girl to introduce herself to all of Meredith Schwartz. It was uncomfortable for her. Before that, she was always only at home gatherings. But after becoming an empress, there will be more and more such techniques. But there was hope that a lot would change for her with her new status. Everything will become less forced, and the need for hypocrisy will disappear. This was necessary. After all, she hoped to enchant her husband with her beauty and become a real mistress. After the events of that day, a series of social outings began. At all these balls, she introduced herself as Lady Meredith Schwartz. At the same time, she studied with a teacher of etiquette, learning new wisdom and secrets of behavior at the emperor's palace. Even her skin care and personal hygiene had changed since she became a bride for the emperor. In the life of the future empress, it is worth paying attention to the smallest details that can be useful to her or her enemies and opponents. The days flew by in an extraordinary commotion. 3 months passed like this. The time for marriage was approaching. Finally, the day of the wedding ceremony arrived. The empress's maid was gathering her belongings and preparing to move to another palace. The girl asked her owner if she really didn't want to take anything else with her. After all, she no longer had anything valuable, and she had no desire to take anything with her from her father's house and the Schwartz family. He will take a minimum of things. After all, the wedding was supposed to be the beginning of a new life, and she wants to take little with her. A lot has changed since she first learned about her future destiny. Then she was just confused and scared. And now she was to become the wife of a great emperor of a powerful country. And now she even wanted a little to gain power and influence for her life and to improve its conditions. The wedding was supposed to be a salvation from a past life full of suffering. The maid began to cry. She said that if Mistress Merrill were alive, she would be proud that her daughter would marry His Majesty, the Emperor of the state himself. Meredith was glad that her mother could rejoice in heaven. The problem was that Meredith's mother came from a nomadic tribe and was a simple servant. The Duke fell in love with her, and the fruit of their love was a girl. Duchess Schwartz despised Merrill for her humble origins. This made her angry and angry. The decision that at least one girl should remain in the house was made with a heavy heart by the Duchess. Merrill's life ended suddenly as a result of an accident. On the way to another meeting, the carriage overturned and Meredith's mother died. The girl said goodbye to her father. He coldly confirmed that it was time to say goodbye. However, it was not a warm and pleasant feeling for the heart. Everything happened formally. The Duke ordered only not to disgrace the honor of their family. After that, he sent his daughter. The girl did not expect warm words from him and did not imagine a different farewell. But sometimes she wanted much more warmth. She had his blood in her as well, and Meredith sometimes wondered if her father felt sorry for her and why he would let another woman treat her like that. The girl was walking to the carriage. She also noticed that Duchess Schwartz and Katerina didn't even come out to say goodbye to her. It was necessary to learn not to expect anything from the surrounding people. So there should have been fewer illusions and fewer disappointments. Finally, the girl reached the emperor's palace. There she was greeted by servants and all who lived in the palace. The servant, who from now on had to constantly serve Her Majesty, was called Yulia Renati, and she swore loyalty to the new mistress. The girl replied that she was glad to see Mrs. Yulia again. To which the young lady replied that Meredith should finally stop using the words of parasites and start mastering the manner of speaking that is characteristic of palace aristocrats and nobles. But as long as the marriage ceremony has not taken place, Then the old manner of speaking will do. But when the girl officially becomes the empress, she should be much more careful. And it is also worth following which of the nobles and aristocrats will be around. It was also a matter of discipline in the imperial palace. The girl understood what was being said and said that she would be careful in such matters. The woman praised her student. She always, in her opinion, learned everything easily, and therefore there should be no problems. The wedding was only 2 hours away. Servants busied themselves around their new mistress. You should have time to do everything before the wedding. Merendis decided to ask Yulia what kind of person the emperor was. The woman did not know where to start. The bride of the emperor reported that she had never seen the groom before the wedding. She preferred to remain silent about everything else and not to tell her servants about the details of the marriage itself. This was the first of the lessons that Yulia told her about. The woman replied after some delay that the emperor himself was a good person, and his character was simply wonderful. Moreover, he had a refined nature and was very graceful. After these words, the girl had an even bigger doubt about why the choice fell on her. Merendis inquired about the atmosphere in His Majesty's palace. She was worried that something might threaten her life after taking the empress throne. After all, there were probably a number of other candidates for her place. Finally, it was time for the marriage ceremony. The girl saw the emperor for the first time. He fully corresponded to the description given by Yulia. This man resembled a statue from a museum, but it seemed that the man was sick. Merendis offered her hand to the man, but she almost pulled her back because the groom's hand was as if made of ice. This confirmed her guess that the man was definitely not healthy. In addition, he began to cough and show other signs of illness. The girl wondered why no one present asked how the emperor was feeling. It seemed that this was all the norm for this man. Someone knew what was happening to His Majesty. But the priest interrupted his thoughts. The representative of the cult asked the usual questions about whether the couple would be together in sorrow and happiness. And will they support each other constantly and without objections? Both newlyweds had to give an oath of consent, which would finally seal their union. Merendis understood why no one had inquired about the emperor's well-being. Meanwhile, the priest asked the emperor about his willingness to take the girl as his legal wife, and will His Majesty bring light and prosperity to his state. Now the girl guessed why Duke Schwartz had given her in marriage to His Majesty. And the ceremony took its turn. The saint once again asked if their words were true, and after which there would be no going back. Everyone listened to the bride and groom and their vows. Merendis guessed that the Schwartz family was not going to do anything good for her, and now her guesses turned out to be true. Her relatives knew in what condition His Majesty was, and that he would not last long in such a case. Everything went well. An unknown lady greeted Merendis right after the ceremony. The woman wished happiness to the couple and a happy family. The girl in turn wondered whether her family would be truly happy, and how will it behave with such a man in the future. A couple of hours later, the guests began to talk about the fact that His Majesty was very ill today. Some even began to doubt that he would come to the solemn banquet. It was not necessary, but the guests could take offense at the ruler. But the ladies continued to discuss the emperor's health. One of them said that it was not necessary to break the comedy and arrange a ceremony. After all, everyone knew very well about the real state of His Majesty. Everyone felt sorry for his new wife. Everyone was talking about the fact that Mindis's relatives had deceived her by not telling her everything about her future husband. There was a grain of truth in this. But some of the guests did not agree that something was hidden from the girl. After all, it was impossible not to say such a thing. In addition, some heard that the new empress was also ill throughout her childhood. That is why few people knew about her at all, because her mother and her sister never took her to formal events for this reason. Her Majesty could not stand the road. Many thought that it was very good that seriously ill people found each other. This is how they will receive support from their second particle. And this was a good option in the palace, where intrigues and plans to overthrow the government and some kind of betrayal were constantly being built. The women talked about many more things until one of them asked her interlocutor to be quieter and not talk too much. But the woman assured that the two of them are here, and no one will be able to hear them and report their conversation. One can't be too safe in such matters, Merendes thought. She didn't even know what most of the nobility of the empire knew about. But everyone in her family was silent, because they knew that the bastard had nothing more to dream about. And partly the Rams were right. But now, when she knew the whole truth, it was too late to change anything. A bastard had no right to speak as an equal in his family, and now her fate was already closely intertwined with the fate of the emperor. She is his wife and support from now on, according to the vows. And therefore, when she got into such an environment, she should rely only on her own strength to be responsible for her every decision. The Duke and his family approached her to congratulate Merendes. His words are more like mockery. Katerina openly mocked her sister. She asked why Her Majesty was so unhappy on her wedding day. After all, today she has become a great ruler. Could it be that she was afraid of being treated badly because everyone would find out about her background? The girl could not stand it. It was necessary to show one's will and close the mouth of the vile sister. Merendes ordered to watch her tongue. Katerina disobeyed, but her father suddenly sided with the empress. It was he who stopped the bullying. In the future, such situations should be avoided until she learns to put aristocrats in their place. For this, you need to develop a commanding voice and a manner worthy of Her Majesty. With these thoughts, she intended to leave the company. The Duke warned her to behave with dignity and not think of dishonoring the honor of the family. But the girl said that if it were up to her, she would not only tarnish the honor of the family, but also completely spill the ink on all its members. But it's worth holding on for now. Merendes was lying in the bathroom. She thought that Katerina was right, that there was no one in the palace to stand up for her as a girl. It is necessary to behave quietly until a defender is found for her, and you don't need to be grateful for the Duke. The key decision regarding her promotion to the role of Empress had to be made in the palace. There was even a certain possibility that the ailing emperor and the Duke had planned something together. And then the girl remembered with horror the state of His Majesty and the fact that she was holding his hand. And the Duke must have had allies at court. Unlike her, she was still here alone. And it is not known what to expect from a man. It was necessary to decide on this as soon as possible. The Empress decided to visit His Majesty. The only power she now possessed was that of a healer. In her hands, she was playing with a mana of strength that glowed with a strange golden glow. This skill was passed down through the female generation and went to Meredith and Mother, but these abilities have long been banned in the duchy. Since its bearers are few, and its origin and source remain unknown to this day, that is why ordinary people are afraid of her, and the government and the church are trying in every possible way to humiliate her authority and destroy her. But, unfortunately, it was all she could rely on in this case. She did not know who the Duke's patron was, but she should have used her power to the fullest. In this way, she will definitely help a sick man. In addition, the power of the girl was prohibited only in Balset. Within the Emperor's domain, she could freely use it. Before that, she skillfully hid it from everyone. Will it be possible to do the same in the palace, and is it worth opening up? Visited Merendes. The girl asked the servants why and decided to visit her, but the woman was not lost. She just wanted to remind that it was time for the girl to go to her fiancé's room. After all, the first wedding night was ahead, and you won't give it up. Merendes said that it seemed to her that His Majesty was not feeling well at the ceremony, so maybe there was an option that nothing should have happened today. But he was not present at the banquet either, and the question arose whether Julia knew the whole truth. The woman asked to forgive her, because she believed that the girl was told about everything by her relatives, the family of Duke Schwartz, and Merendes, knowing about this state of His Majesty, decided to marry him. Julia herself had no bad intentions. Even then, the woman herself thought that the Schwartzes had deceived the girl. After all, one cannot hide such a thing from a daughter who was soon to become an empress. The girl herself also believed that no one thought that her relatives had deceived her and manipulated her. Merendes was not feeling well. She believed that she had been deceived and taken advantage of. Julia tried to convey to her mistress that she herself did not know anything. Besides, How could a girl get married when she herself was not aware of everything? The girl calmed down the servant, but replied that she herself was very much to blame for what happened now. And Mirandus never doubted her loyalty. Now is not the time to talk. They will discuss it later in private. Julia bowed to the hostess and said that from now on, she would tell her everything in the smallest details. The girl agreed, but said that His Majesty should not be disturbed today. Today, the Emperor was supposed to rest. He's too tired for that. The servant replied that she would report this right now to the main palace. And it will not happen again that her mistress will not know something or will be deceived by someone. From now on, it will be the main duty of the maid to protect the interests of Her Majesty. The servant who stayed with Mirandus asked if her mistress was now going to His Majesty's room. The girl replied that she asked Julia to warn the palace about her absence at night. But gossip and rumors could spread in the palace because of this. The maid was happy with this decision of Mirandus. She said we should gather before midnight. The Empress agreed that she should stay with her husband in order not to betray the traditions and customs of the palace and people in general. When Mirandus and her servant finally reached the Emperor's chambers in the main palace through the long corridors, the Empress released Diana, the servant. The maid once again asked if the owner could manage without her, but she answered positively and calmed the servant down. The girl replied that she would come tomorrow morning to pick up her mistress. And now it is really late and they should say goodbye. The Empress really thought that nothing terrible could happen to her in this palace, even at night. The guard had to keep watch. The sword was at Her Majesty's throat. The Emperor, holding his weapon tightly in his hands, said that he did not expect to see his wife here. And Mirandus herself thought that she had dismissed her servant too soon. His Majesty asked why she had come to him. The Emperor asked if she meant to check if he was not dead yet. The girl was at a loss as to how to prove that she was not involved in this attempt on her husband. And he demanded to confess everything, because she should have known about the attempt. Mirandus replied that she simply did not want their marriage to be gossiped about and talked about on every corner due to the absence of a wedding night. But His Majesty did not believe that the girl had come here for his sake. He said that either she is too naive, or she believes that in this way she will succeed in deceiving him. Perhaps even that in her mind she was already a widow, whose husband had been suddenly killed immediately after the wedding. The Emperor had a hard time trusting people. The girl tried in every possible way to convince that she had come simply in order not to violate the age-old traditions of the imperial palace. The man asked why she believed that she was in no way related to the Dowager Empress. Meredith needed to calm down. According to legend, the Empress Dowager was the patroness of the Schwartz family. The girl did not yet know how often attacks on her husband occurred. The servants of the palace told her about this later, but it was possible to believe. A man looked into the room. It was one of the Emperor's personal guards. The guard was surprised that even on such a night they tried to kill His Majesty. But the Emperor said that he had been waiting for his appearance for a long time. Sarcasm sounded in the ruler's words, but the servant asked to lower the sword and calm down. The man emphasized that it was worth getting out of here, and the servant had to clean the rooms after everything that happened here. But traces of blood will be difficult to wipe from the palace and wallpaper. The guard leaned over to the Empress to pick her up and assure her that the blood-stained dress should be cleaned, and the woman perfectly controls herself and knows how to play a role. Mirandus could not understand what was being said, but it was worth considering his words. The Emperor said that the Empress considered everything that happened to be a misunderstanding, and he called the guard Felix, and the woman seemed to swear that she had nothing to do with the former Empress. But the guard could hardly believe it. He was sure of something else. Felix emphasized that the girl was the daughter of Duke Schwartz, albeit the second, and therefore she definitely had a connection with the late Empress. Mirandus tried to answer that she was forced into this marriage, and she could not refuse it. The girl stood in front of the men. She said that she herself could not understand what was happening around her. The Emperor replied that he would not believe a word she said until she proved the exact opposite, and he ordered her to think very carefully. Bloodied, His Majesty looked at his wife. He said that in general it would be easier for him to kill her on the spot and say that it was all the work of the killers sent to him. And keeping the Schwartz's child alive was not part of his plans. The girl was scared. Merendis knew she had to come up with something quickly. It is necessary that the emperor himself ordered to save her life. The girl perfectly understood that she was putting almost everything on the line, but she had no other way. The emperor needed her strength now. The empress turned to her husband. She said she knew the secret to curing him of his illness. That was the power she possessed. It seemed that the emperor believed her. This was his last chance to get rid of the disease. The men looked intently at the girl. They did not know what to answer. Their words about her being His Majesty's last hope of recovery still rang in his ears. But the man assured that if she lied, he would not spare her. The ruler himself asked menacingly and sternly if the girl had any idea what he was sick with and where his illness came from. But he still decided to give the girl a chance so that she could correct herself and try her abilities on him. Merendis replied that this afternoon she had the impression that His Majesty was almost at the point of death. And at night, he single-handedly dealt with the attackers, of whom there were at least a dozen, and now he gives the impression of being completely healthy. At the same time, Merendis thought that the symptoms of such a strange disease, in which the patient feels bad during the day and improves at night, were not described in any medical book she knew. This put her in a rather difficult position, but it was necessary to act. Merendis activated her magical energy. The men were very surprised by this. They believed that it was all just tricks. But the girl did not let them recover. She informed that now her husband is under the curse of black magic. The emperor was more interested now in the fact that his wife had used magical abilities. He did not think that witchcraft was allowed in her homeland. The words spoken by Emperor Justinus 200 years ago flashed in his memory. According to the past emperor, who was a cruel and rather despotic ruler with serious intentions towards magicians and sorcerers, magic blinds people and sows confusion around. After that, all magicians were beheaded, and any use of magic was forbidden. Therefore, everyone around believed that there were no more magicians left. The girl assured that her magic is only healing in nature. The emperor asked if the former Empress Dowager, who was the patron saint of the House of Schwartz, could have cast her curse on him. Felix asked if His Majesty took this girl's words seriously. Suddenly, she's actually going to hurt him even more. But Merendis asked in that case, what good would it do her to do worse to her husband? After all, the Empress Dowager did not care who would be next to the emperor. The emperor thought about how difficult it was to find a mage and a healer in the same person. Felix asked His Majesty to think again about whether to trust this girl. The ruler said that maybe the guard is right, but first we should clean up here. The man turned to Merendis and suggested that his empress talk elsewhere. He ordered the frightened and confused girl to follow him. His Majesty realized that the girl was holding on confidently for someone whom he had almost killed. He wondered if she really knew nothing about the Empress Dowager. But even if everything is like that, she still holds herself bravely and confidently. To begin with, the man asked who knew about the real state of affairs at the moment. The girl felt embarrassed. She replied that no one knew about her features at all. Currently, only 3 people know about her abilities. 2 of them are now in this room. The third was Felix. The emperor, in turn, replied that 4 people knew about his illness. Merendis asked how all these people could be trusted. The emperor assured that no one would betray him. Even the court physician will keep his mouth shut and tell no one. His Majesty said that it was strange to hear from her about the suspicion. He reminded her that he spared her not because he believed. He spared her entirely for other purely marginal reasons. In any case, you should not doubt the loyalty of the doctor. His older sister died at the hands of their common enemy. Everyone who knew about the secret had certain scores with the Schwartz family. But the girl asked if her husband had heard anything about her before the wedding itself. And why was she chosen to play the honorable role of the wife of a great ruler? Although the Duchess was definitely against it. Merendis said that she is not actually the Schwartz's daughter. She was the bastard of a duke and his mistress who came from a tribe of nomads. Therefore, she was treated like a stray dog, or even worse. But such frankness is not appreciated by the emperor. He assured that he does not trust any person to the end. He sometimes finds it hard to believe even himself. Any person can behave unpredictably in certain circumstances. The girl is impressed by his character and firmness. His Majesty replied that his stepmother had cursed him with black magic, and therefore he had no choice but to treat people like this. But we should stop talking and get down to business. The husband stood before his wife and ordered to try to remove the spell. The girl was scared. The emperor assured that it was too late to give back and refuse his words. Marinides explained that dark magic and curses were not exactly her specification. She never had anything to do with this kind of work. In order to cure His Majesty, it is necessary to first find out the reasons for what caused him to be cursed. The only thing that was known was that the caster's body should have been scarred. Such a spell takes a lot of strength from the magician himself, who performs the magical procedure. And most likely, the Empress Dowager herself could not put such a powerful curse on her adopted son. Therefore, it takes time to establish the cause and symptoms. The man grabbed his head. He was amazed at how difficult it really was. His Majesty asked how long it would take to establish the causes and find out the curse and its countermeasures. Marinides asked for a week. After all, her life also depended on how quickly and skillfully she would find a cure for the emperor's illness. The man replied that it was too long, but the girl assured that this is exactly how much is needed for a literature review. And therefore she asked to allow her access to the closed section of the Palace Imperial Library. There are few books left about magic in general, but very few books about black magic. You will have to study this kind of literature. The emperor gave permission, but the only condition was that the girl had to remove the curse from the emperor at any cost. She swore on the lives of all her relatives and friends who were still alive. Marinides decided to go to her palace. A lot happened for one night. You need to rest well and relax. After all, she had a lot of work starting tomorrow, but His Majesty assured that today she was to stay with him. The girl was surprised. However, the emperor said that everything would be fine. Otherwise, the girl covered in blood will cause a stir among his subjects. The girl tried to joke about what would happen between them that night. Marinides said she would sleep on the couch, but the man assured her that she could lie down on the bed. But the man said that he is not worried about her health, but he takes very good care of his own safety. The girl could not understand whether to read a threat in his tone, but she agreed to all his conditions. She had no other option at the moment. Marinides lay down to rest. However, thoughts about the possible connection of the Schwartz family with the widow, the Empress did not give her peace. Analyzing the last words of her relatives before leaving, she understood that the Schwartzes were well aware of the Emperor's condition. And perhaps the scent assassins were mercenaries hired by the Schwartz to finally put an end to the annoying bastard and loser Emperor. And this is another proof that the ducal family did not consider her their own. The girl tossed and turned and could not fall asleep. She was shaking even more with anger. It was worth counting sheep or something else. To fall asleep, suddenly the emperor asked if his wife was asleep. Marinides was surprised. She did not expect this at all. The emperor replied that during the day he generally lies down and does nothing. At night, he has a lot of free time. His Majesty asked if he could ask his wife about something. He asked for an explanation as to whether Mother Marinides was a mage. The girl replied that she got her strength from her mother. The man assured that he did not expect to see a magician at all. Although he observed everything with his own eyes, no one would believe him. Marinides asked if she could ask a question herself. She asked if the strength leaves a man with the sunrise and returns with the onset of darkness. He said she hit the spot, and after a few hours, everything had to start from the beginning. It was not even believed. For now. The man explained that all the things that he does not have time to do because of his bad condition, he makes up for them at night. Otherwise, state work will come to a standstill and the state will fall into chaos. And when power slips out of their hands, then the Dowager Empress will take his place very quickly. But you should not immediately after he recovers, do all the work and betray the fact that he has improved. After all, then the widow will suspect something very quickly. Even before he fell ill, he had placed assistants and spies in various places. And everyone now thinks that they are the ones working instead of him. And the acting emperor is constantly in the palace and cannot do anything in the field of government because he is ill and unable to work for a long time. And his assistants actually help him quite a bit. The girl asked if the emperor really gets so tired. His Majesty replied that he was getting very tired, so he should rest, because it is so easy to get sick in reality, and that's why Meredith's role in his plan is very important. And here the man set a condition. According to her, the girl will get everything she wants, but only when she heals His Imperial Majesty. Meredith couldn't believe the words about everything she wanted. After all, she spent her whole life in the Duke's palace and suppressed her desires. She spent her whole life without even thinking about what she really wanted to do. And now her main desire was to survive and get out of this palace because she was in danger here. She didn't know what she was thinking. The girl decided to ask about those killers who attacked him at night. Did the guards around the palace fail to see the group of armed men? But the Duke assured them that they had passed through a secret passage that led directly to the Duke's bedchamber. His Majesty ordered Felix to carry the bodies through the secret passage and seal it. But besides this, there were also other secret passages. Attackers could also use them. But today, there was no longer any threat of attack. It was calmer that way. The Duke asked his wife if he had disturbed her sleep, but the fault was actually entirely hers. She herself came to his bedroom. Finally, both were tired and decided to rest. The girl looked at her husband in a new way. The morning has come. Merendes woke up to a loud cough. The emperor was ill again. He looked sickly again. The girl asked how he was feeling. The man replied that he does not give the impression of being healthy and satisfied with life and his condition. Merendes begged to forgive her. The man was irritated because he was sick. A sick person was always irritated and nervous. The woman could not believe that a person could change overnight, but there was no need to be surprised. The woman asked her fiancé if she could help him with anything. He thanked, but refused. The man simply asked what time it was. He joked that it was very good when there were no meetings on the morning of the wedding night. The girl replied that in this way she had an important mission. She had to gain the trust of the Empress Dowager. Later, Merendes was going to visit her, and the emperor had to rest and prepare for a quick recovery. The girl is optimistic. The emperor said that according to palace etiquette, it is worth paying a visit to the Empress Dowager. But now it was dangerous to go to her. The woman could be angry at the failure of her sent assassins. He was worried that Merendes would go alone. The girl was sure that he would not be ashamed in front of her, and that nothing terrible would happen. And she will try so that it does not turn out to be anything terrible for His Majesty himself. But the man was worried. The Empress was still that thing. But the girl reassured him that at the moment she was the only one who could help him cope with his illness. Merendes saw that now they are in the same boat with the Emperor and partners not only on the marriage field. His Majesty replied that in that case she would definitely live longer. Otherwise, she had no chance to survive. But now he will listen to her opinion and consider the girl his ally and comrade on the battlefield with the Empress ruler. He had high hopes for his wife. The Emperor ordered the servant to call Felix. It was necessary to give new orders to everyone around and look for other entrances to the palace that the killers could use this time. Felix came literally a minute later. He looked at his ruler again with that expression on his face that read the advice not to talk about all the secrets in front of this girl. Merendes could tell that the head guard still did not trust her. At that moment, when Merendes and Felix were alone, the man said that he would advise the girl to keep quiet about the events of the previous night. He will do the same. Everything will remain a secret. The girl said that soon they should see each other again. Julia met her in the corridor. The woman was happy when she saw her mistress. She asked why they were not called to the main palace. Then they would definitely meet their mistress and lead her to where she was going. Merendes reassured her. The girl joked that they had never had to talk about such trifles with His Majesty. The women were embarrassed to hear about this, so Julia asked them to think about the morning toilet. Her Majesty understood what made the maids so angry. Merendes replied that her servant girls were too optimistic. She said that they almost had a fight with him in the morning, and now she wants to visit the Empress Dowager. The servants clearly did not like this idea. The girl asked if the Empress Dowager had woken up yet. Julia answered that a woman usually wakes up at 7 in the morning. Mirendis was happy about this fact and decided to pay her a morning visit right away. In the palace of the Dowager Empress, everything was arranged no less luxuriously and elegantly than in the palace of the emperor himself. The maid asked Mirendis to wait a little. In the meantime, I am ready to treat her to tea or coffee according to her taste. It was as if after what had happened last night, she had developed an immunity to unexpected or dangerous events. But the voice that she heard was colder than the fierce winter shriek. The Dowager Empress approached her daughter-in-law. The woman tried to depict the joy and suffocation of the reception. This woman was the second wife of the emperor and the stepmother of the current one. She was also the mother of Fabia, a pretender to the throne. And it was this woman who could send the hired killers yesterday, having previously told them about the secret passage that led from the dungeon directly to the emperor's resting place. But the girl still had to behave naturally and not show her excitement. The Dowager Empress asked not to address her too formally, and she also preferred ordinary home communication without titles and ranks. It was inconvenient to hear the appeal of a child from her lips. You should be on your guard. The woman ordered Nicole to bring tea and sweets because after the wedding night, Her Majesty was very tired. The Empress Dowager inquired about the state of health of His Majesty the Emperor. The widow said that this was Mirendis's first visit to her, so it would be awkward if she refused the treat. She hoped that the young girl would not refuse it, and he will understand the whims of the old woman. Mirendis understood that the widow was trying to hold her as long as possible so that she would not leave her chambers. And indeed, this woman was not as simple as she seemed at first glance. The Empress asked how the wedding night went. The Empress Dowager gladly welcomed the new member of the Balzine family. Hypocrisy was heard everywhere in her words. Another woman in the place of a young bride would have a serious conversation with this woman. However, Mirendis did not have that luxury. Mirendis asked what exactly her father could tell about her. The widow's answer could tell a lot about the relationship between the Empress Dowager and the family of Duke Schwartz. The woman answered with general phrases about the mind and body of the bride. And the widow added that the old Duke had not said anything false about his daughter. Mirendis thought that the father did not say only one thing. He missed that the girl was a bastard. The girl could not help asking whether the widow's word was decisive. The woman replied that the old man had assured her that the title of Empress would be a heavy burden for Katerina. His youngest daughter was not ready for such a burden. Mirendis said that her father deliberately considered her a better empress than the younger one. The widow continued to talk about the unique place of the empress in the life of the entire empire. This position and title were the main stone in the structure of the entire state, and the birth of the future ruler did not play a big role. The daughter-in-law agreed that the main thing in choosing a wife for the emperor should be the honor and dignity of the applicant. The widow said that she is fully ready for further cooperation, and she had a question about the future of two powerful women. The girl was wary. However, with a smile on her face, the Dowager Empress assured that everything would be fine. She only asked that Mirendis treat her and trust her as her own mother. The girl could not understand what was being said. The woman replied that since they will now live in the same palace, she would like the girl to call her mother. Mirendis thought that the Duchess with her idiotic requests was not enough for her, so the widow also intervened. The girl also wondered if the Duke had told her that she was a bastard, but she was definitely not going to do this on her own. She simply replied that the new order is still strange for her, so she will fulfill the request a little later. As soon as he gets used to the palace, he will immediately call the Dowager Empress his mother. In addition, she was so worried about the life of her adopted son. Also, the relationship between the bride and the widow had to be quite good. The situation was de-escalating. The woman assured that she is very proud of such a daughter-in-law and admires her very much because she is ready to devote her whole life to the emperor, who was tormented by an unknown disease. And then it was time for the widow's second request. Merendis was preparing for the next outburst. The Dowager Empress asked to watch and observe the Emperor's well-being in detail, and to report all changes, be they positive or negative, to her. There was nothing suspicious or anything that could disturb the Emperor. The girl did not know how to react to such an offer. She thought it was espionage. However, the Empress herself did not think so. She justified such a position by caring for her son. He doesn't even visit her in the morning anymore like he used to. And that is why news about her adopted son does not reach her often. And even those that came in were far from the truth. And if Merendis helps, then the woman will always know about the well-being of her beloved son. It turns out that you need to spy. The girl wanted to ask why then the mother of her dear son was ruining his life with black magic and curses. Merendis said the Empress was right, as always. The woman asked if this meant that the girl was ready to fulfill her request. Merendis replied that she would of course comply with Her Majesty's order or request. After all this will be done to maintain the normal condition of her husband. And for her now, it was one of the pillars of her existence. The girl hoped that they would believe her. The Dowager Empress was happy that she had found a common language with her daughter-in-law. In fact, she didn't expect everything to go so smoothly. She pretended to be happy about the appearance of another beautiful person in the palace. And she invited to come in not only in the morning. Merendis played along with the widow. She said that it is really as easy and warm to be with a woman as with one's own mother. The Empress could not tell whether her daughter-in-law was laughing or answering seriously. However, the result was already certain. The Dowager Empress still could not believe that she now had such a beautiful daughter-in-law. It was nice to realize that. The woman hoped that she had found a spy for her dark affairs. And he will be so directly close to the Emperor. In parting, the widow smiled broadly and said that she had high hopes and expectations for how their future cooperation would turn out. The girl seemed to her to be cunning, but more naive, and it was not worth worrying about. Everything was supposed to work out. When the girl left the room of the Empress widow, Julia noticed how pale and sickly her young mistress had become. The girl said that she really felt as if all the juices had been sucked out of her. The widow was really a witch. After Meredith arrived at the Emperor's palace, the man asked how the meeting with his stepmother went. The girl told him everything clearly. But here doubts about Julia crept into the Empress. Where were the guarantees that she does not work for a widow? It was worth keeping her at a distance for some time. Besides, it was not the right time to talk to someone about whether they should be trusted. She spent very little time in the palace, so she could not draw any conclusions. Meredith told His Majesty that she was very worried. The servant told that she was nervous, because she was at a meeting with the elder of the imperial family. However, the woman made a pleasant impression on her. She was so well-mannered and majestic that Merendis decided to become one herself in the future. Julia said that the girl was too tired. However, the girl herself had no desire to talk to the servant about it. The Emperor's suspicion was contagious. Now she wanted only to return to her room and rest there from everything. However, the girl said that on the way they should go to the main palace. She had something to say to His Majesty before they parted for the day, and that was not the way to treat a man. In addition, court etiquette. Merendis found her husband behind a book. She did not expect such a turn of events. His Majesty replied to the greeting that he had not expected to see her in his chambers so soon. After all, it wasn't even dinner yet. But the girl had something to tell. The Emperor understood that his wife had already had a meeting with the Dowager, the Empress. Merendis said the woman had asked her to keep an eye on His Majesty and report on changes in his health. And the girl was forced to agree. The man himself believed that in this way his stepmother did not yet know about the night attack and its results. Merendis assured that she made every effort to play the role assigned to her and gain the trust of the Empress Dowager. But His Majesty said that pretense was not his wife's forte. The girl was indignant, but remained silent. Even if she is caught in a lie, she has not done anything illegal. After all, the widow is wary of everyone from the very beginning. The girl remembered the story of this woman. She surrounded the then emperor in 2 steps and received the title of Empress. But she herself came from a poor family of little-known nobility. An ordinary person was definitely not up to it. But the emperor broke her from her thoughts. he asked his wife what she had decided to do. After all, when agreeing to such an agreement, it was first necessary to consider everything in detail. Mirandus replied that she would start by talking about his bad health. And in any case, it will not be a lie. His Majesty tensed at these words, but he asked what else she would do. The girl replied that she had something else to learn from him. It was necessary for the case. For this, she needed a doctor. The palace doctor had to tell the details of her husband's illness. The emperor ordered to call a doctor, Jerome Brown. The girl asked how she could see him. His Majesty was advised to say that she suffers from insomnia. Among all the doctors who served the emperor, there was no one more kind and professional than this man. He is a true professional in the treatment of insomnia. He enjoyed the trust of almost all the residents of the palace and kept his mouth shut. The emperor added that the insomnia was a sign for him and the doctor. The girl promised to tell everything in detail after talking with the doctor and spending some more time studying medical treatises. Felix entered the room. He noticed the state in which His Majesty was. The security guard asked what happened. He asked again, "Does the ruler really trust this girl so much?" To this, the emperor replied that the girl was not lying. She is generally not good at this. But Felix urged not to trust so easily. But His Majesty replied that he did not trust anyone, and the bodyguard should have understood this during his years of service. But the conversation had to end. Until Felix finds another mage capable of healing. His Majesty said that at the moment it didn't matter to him at all who would put him on his feet. The result itself was important. If only there was a way to get rid of this terrible headache. At this time, Mirandus asked to bring a doctor because she felt that she would definitely not sleep tonight. The servant was worried. There was no impression that she was pretending. But the girl decided to play her role to the end. She said she hadn't even closed her eyes since last night. At first, she believed that the reason was that she was nervous before the first wedding night. But now I understood that it was some kind of illness. It is worth calling a doctor so that it does not spread further. Mirandus asked to call someone who was very well versed in the treatment of insomnia. Julia promised to call the best doctor in the whole kingdom. This doctor treated the emperor himself and will gladly provide services to the empress. The girl was worried whether the doctor would understand this secret signal. Everything had to work out because the dacha had been on her side lately. It is desirable that the whole idea went with such ease. It was worth waiting now. A rather strange-looking man with an apathetic, phlegmatic expression entered the room. He introduced himself as the chief physician of the entire palace. He is pleased that the empress herself turned to him. He reported that he had spoken with the emperor. Mirandus was happy. In this way, she hoped for a quick conversation and as much open information of a personal nature as possible. The girl also asked how long the doctor had been in the palace. He answered that from the very beginning of the current emperor's reign. His Majesty's wife noted that it was not much, but Browner replied that he did not want to be in the palace until that moment. The girl remembered the younger sister of the doctor whom he lost because of the Schwartz family, and it was the desire for revenge that somehow brought these two souls together. But she did not dare to ask about it further, because it would be tactless and wrong. It is worth getting down to business. Mirandus wanted to know more about the disease. The doctor said that's what he came here for. He is ready to tell as thoroughly as possible about all the details of the case, although he did not promise to tell anything special. The man told about the terrible torment of His Majesty throughout the day. Headache, chills, and cough did not give rest to His Majesty. Sometimes there were symptoms of high fever, dizziness, and ringing in the ears. A whole bouquet of symptoms that fit almost everything. It is difficult to single out something specific. That is why the doctor believed that he would be of little help in solving this case. He did not think it was worth focusing on one disease. Modern medicine was helpless in this matter. The girl asked if there were moments when the symptoms weakened. The doctor replied that in full, the symptoms and pain subsided and hardly bothered the ruler. On such days, black magic lost its power and gave life to those who were cursed. In this case, we can definitely talk about the magical causes of the disease. Mirendis thanked the doctor. She said that the information she received from him helped to decide exactly how to treat the man. Brown asked if she was actually a mage healer. The girl agreed with him, but she had little experience. The doctor was pleased to meet the representative of the healing magicians. There were very few of them anyway, but after the ban on magic, they were not seen at all. The girl modestly answered that she was lucky to inherit strength from her mother. She replied that she really admired the doctor. After all, he did not inherit everything he knows now, but learned and developed it in practice on his own. And now he was just a well of various knowledge. Jerome was amazed at Her Majesty's frankness. The girl replied that she feels more calm when she knows about the presence of a good doctor in the palace. This professional is always ready to help and will never betray his suzerain. The man was surprised. He couldn't believe that a person of such high rank was talking to him about trust. The peculiarity and specificity of the situation was that they had known each other for less than an hour. But the girl emphasized that she trusts the person of her husband. The girl added that apart from the two of them, no one would be able to help the emperor, and the health of the healer himself, who will perform the healing, also played an important role. That is why they are closely related to Jerome. In case of illness, her life is in his hands. But the main goal was that she needed someone with whom she would still have a connection, even to stand up to the emperor's personal bodyguard Felix. And the help of a doctor will definitely be needed even in the future. Her only request to the doctor was that she begged to treat her as seriously as he treated His Majesty. The man assured that he would serve the girl with faith and truth, and when she needs his help, he is ready at any moment. Mirendis asked if she could ask him a favor. She explained that she had the gift of healing, but the medical knowledge that people obtained from books and studies always remained a mystery to her. And she studied books for a long time, thinking that she would need it someday in the future. The man agreed that her actions were completely justified, although her knowledge was nowhere near that of Jerome. But everything concerned only the basics of medicine. The doctor understood that the girl was trying to hint at something quite subtly. He said he guessed her request, but still remained mysterious. She openly said that she would like to gain deeper knowledge in the field of medicine. Her Majesty asked her husband for help in this regard. He replied that it would not be difficult for him. Jerome said that he is always in the medical building of the Imperial Palace and can be visited. The girl was happy about it. The doctor was already going home if his help was not needed at the moment. But he said he needed an official reason for his presence in this part of the palace, even for the emperor when he is angry. Also, they will pretend that he prescribed medicine for physical and psychological spiritual health. He gave her medicine that simply helped her to relax before bed and fall asleep faster. The man did not think that he would help with anything else. The girl thought that she should hurry to heal the emperor. After all, in this way, she will receive additional points in the sphere of trust in her. After the end of the emperor's healing, she will cease to be a burden for him. I wanted to finish faster. Julia knocked on the door. She asked if Her Majesty was ready to take the medicine that a servant had brought from the emperor's own physician. The woman emphasized that the girl could be excited once more, and this could cause health problems. But the girl decided that she should not go into the details of conversations about her condition. She preferred to talk about her schedule for tomorrow. Her Majesty asked that she consider her visit to the library inside the main building of the palace. Finally, all matters were resolved. Mirendis told her maid that she could be free, but one should not forget what she instructed her to do this morning. Julia tried to say that an ordinary maid could handle such an order. However, Her Majesty wanted Julia to take up this matter. Meanwhile, she was going to go for a walk and get some fresh air. The girl was determined to find evidence that would help her case. It was impossible to delay. The girl came to the palace library without warning. The woman in charge of the library looked at Her Majesty in surprise. The girl ordered to be silent and do without unnecessary titles and formalities. She was interested in certain information. Mirendis reassured the employee by saying that she would just read certain books and go about her business. So don't worry about it. It was not worth going to the forbidden department just yet, even though she had access from the emperor himself. But even working in this part, she could get the necessary information. The girl asked to be left alone. It had been a long time since she had enjoyed reading alone. Now she had an excellent opportunity to combine the pleasant with the useful. Mirendis ordered Yulia to wait for her here. The woman did not understand this attitude. She wanted to answer something to the hostess, but the girl did not need further conversations, especially what could have happened in the library. It was supposed to be the safest place there. The woman accepted her participation. Her Majesty reassured and said that she would call if necessary. Also, the servant did not have to relax, but simply could also read books, if she liked such an activity. Mirendis climbed the stairs and thought that since she became empress, it had become difficult for her to take a moment to be alone. And now it is worth collecting information. However, she will give up books about magic for the time being. But she did not expect that the first book that fell into her hands was a book about magic. What should be expected from the library of the great emperor? Knowledge was valued in this country, and its prosperity was partly due to this. However, there were no curse books to be seen anywhere. This testified to the peaceful nature of magical knowledge and abilities in this country, and should she go further in search of the necessary knowledge? The cabinets were simply bursting with books and folios. The girl was using a ladder. Volumes of black magic lay on top of the bookcases. Her hand could not reach the book, and the princess began to reach for the necessary literature with her whole body. But it was not necessary to do this. Mirendis was falling, but suddenly she was in the hands of the emperor. He held her firmly in front of him. The girl is amazed that the man kept her for so long. His Majesty offered to finally get off it. The girl is embarrassed. She returned to her husband and inquired about his well-being, but he replied that soon the sun would set, and he would have his normal, adequate strength again. However, even during the day, you should not treat him as a suicide bomber. Mirendis replied that he did look like that during the day. The man just kept silent. He asked if she had seen a doctor. The girl replied that she did everything as the man ordered, and she had a conversation with his doctor. In the course of the conversation, it was revealed that dark magic was indeed involved. But she was also interested in how His Majesty himself ended up here. He replied that he watched her for several minutes while she stood with her back to him. The man assured that his wife not only does not know how to lie, but is also not very attentive and observant. He was behind her for so long that anything could happen to her. It is necessary to attach guards to it just in case. The girl bowed to him. It was his cleverness and speed of movement, which she did not expect to see from him during the day, that saved him from numerous blows and injuries. Gratitude was intertwined in the heart with some other feeling. But she couldn't resist saying that she would have healed herself if she had fallen or something like that. The man said that she was actually an optimist, and then he determined without a mistake that the girl wanted a book about the prohibition of using black magic. It was surprising how a book with such a name could help in such a matter as healing. His Majesty looked skeptically at the girl and the book, but Mirendis replied that she could not find a suitable book among such wealth. Mirendis hinted that she could not find a book on the magic data she needed in the public domain. The emperor understood that the woman was asking permission to visit the forbidden department. It was very obvious to him that he had lived in a palace. He replied that forbidden books on dark magic and sorcery were hidden in a special room, and only one person has the keys from her, and it is not difficult to guess that this person was him, His Majesty. The girl was happy. She asked to be given access right now, but the emperor replied that she treats her like a toy. He was interested in why his wife felt that everything was done so easily and effortlessly. The man assured that he was not against her visiting the library in any case. But you should think about doing it at night. He intended to go with her. After all, there was a certain danger in visiting such a place with magical books. The girl reassured herself that His Majesty did not offer anything obscene. And if it were so, she is his legal wife and they have every right to behave as the couple wants. But she did not understand why she could not go to that room herself. The man replied that when she goes there on her own at night, it will arouse suspicion among people, and only he has the keys, and he won't entrust them to her yet.